Exodus chapter 20, verse 15. You shall not steal. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pruning to Prosper. I'm your host, Gina Morton, and this is the podcast where we declutter all the things in your life standing between you and the woman that God has called you to be. And I felt that I needed to record this episode because I felt that I owed the loyal listeners an explanation about where I've been for the past 5 or 6 weeks. And the truth is, I have been drowning in clutter. And so I just wanted to give you an update of my life and how I got to this point and what I'm doing to correct and move forward. So if you are struggling with clutter in your home, you probably know that it doesn't happen overnight, right? It trickles in one little trip to Target or, in my case, the thrift store, like one little thing at a time. But the story I'm going to tell you today isn't one that's necessarily physical clutter. For the past 18 months, it's all been God-led and inspired decisions and commitments that have just kind of crept into my life and into my calendar. And I'm going to go back to December of 2023. I was coming home from an art class because I was at a place in my life where I felt like, it's the winter and we didn't have much going on. So I'm going to actually do something for myself. I'm going to take an art class, it's an old passion of mine. I was an art major in high school. I went to Moore College of Art one summer when I was in high school, and I took the train every day from the city from the burbs into the city. And it was one of the best summers of my life. I love art. I think I've talked about a lot of art on this podcast. I love surrounding myself with art, and I love being around artists and creative people. So I was like, I'm going to take this art class. And at the same time, I was also for the past few years an assistant scoutmaster in an all-girl troop in our town where we live. And on the way home from art class, I couldn't go to an emergency meeting because I had my art class. So I said, call me. I said to my friend, call me, I'll call you on the ride home. So between the art school and my house, which is 7 minutes, I became the new scoutmaster. And I really felt like I didn't have a ton of options because if I said no, then we risked the troop folding. And at the time, I didn't even have a child in the troop. I was kind of in between kids. My older daughter had quit the troop, and my younger daughter wasn't old enough to be in the troop yet. So she would have been old enough in March of the following year. But I love the other adults in the troop. I love the kids. So I thought, I'll just kind of hang out until my next daughter is old enough to come into the troop. So that's what I was doing. I was having a great time. And then, our world was kind of knocked upside down. And here I am, Scoutmaster. But I will tell you, I prayed about it before I said yes. And it is technically my college degree. I have a degree in environmental science and a minor in outdoor education. So I feel like after almost 30 years, I'm actually using my college degree. So it's been fun. But the first year, I would say the learning curve went straight up into heaven. It was steep. It was a lot. And yeah, but we got through it. We saved the troop. We grew the troop. We're doing well. And then this past year is my second year. And I feel like now that I kind of know what I'm doing, we're kind of fine tuning the machine of the troop, right? But it's still been a lot. And we have the largest and most successful female troop in the Lehigh Valley. And as a thank you for doing well and being successful, we get asked for more time, more activities. Council asks, favors and things like that. And even if I'm not the one personally doing the things, I'm still involved in that. I'm reading every email, I'm reading every text, and it's a lot of just like bandwidth in my brain that I need to stay on top of. On top of managing, 35 kids in the troop, 35 girls. So that was a lot. And then last spring, I said yes to being on the gala committee for our school gala. And while that was also really fun, and I felt like God had called me to do that. And a lot of times with these volunteer roles, it's that you respect the person that's in charge and you want to help them, succeed. And so you just give a small yes, and then that small yes turns into this and this and this, and how it goes. I loved it. I made some great new friends. I will not be doing it again this year. Then in the summer of 2024, I got an innocent email saying, I think you should meet this girl. You have a lot in common. She works with this nonprofit. She's into decluttering, all this stuff. So again, I respected the woman that had sent me the email. So I said, okay, let me at least have coffee. I met with this lovely young lady, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know what she wanted from me from this meeting. I didn't know if she was going to be a potential decluttering client. I didn't know if she worked for this nonprofit and she was going to ask me for money. I didn't know. But I had two goals going into the coffee. One was I am not committing any time, and two, I am not committing any money. So that's how I went into the meeting. Well, fast forward 2 hours, I fall absolutely in love with this young lady that is in need of some guidance with raising money for her nonprofit. And I was like, okay, I gave her all the advice I could give her on raising money. I said, I'll pray for you. Peace out. I go to the pool that day and I am praying for her. And I just kept getting these tugs at my heart. Like, how can I help this girl more? And so I texted her, and we both love thrifting. Okay, that's the other thing we had in common. And I thought, how can I help this girl? Because she doesn't need to raise money once. She needs to keep raising money. So I texted her and I say, hey, have you ever considered opening a thrift store? Because you know how there's those thrift stores that they're for nonprofits and all the proceeds go to support the nonprofit. So I was like, this is a great way for this nonprofit to raise money on a continuous basis. So she's like, oh my gosh, I love this idea. And so then, right away, we're going back and forth via text of no clothing, no baby stuff, no electronics, no mattresses. And my brain is getting overwhelmed. And I'm just like, pump the brakes. I gotta figure this out because this could turn into a nightmare, right? And you don't want a thrift store where people are bringing you a bunch of junk, right? Like there's definitely good thrift stores. There's definitely thrift stores that it's a bunch of junk. I've been thrifting since high school. Believe me, I know a good thrift store when I see a good thrift store. So we pumped the brakes on that idea. And I was out to dinner with my husband one night and I said, would you support this nonprofit? And he said, yeah, whatever you want to give, we'll give it. So I said, okay, I have an idea. I said, how about instead of us just writing a check, because that would be easy, I spend that money that you would normally just be writing a check for, and I curate a bunch of awesome vintage stuff, and we host the fundraiser in our house. Because if you've ever heard the story of me buying this house, it was another God-led decision. And I talked to my pastor about it, and he had said to me, fill it with children and use it for the greater glory of God. So to me, hosting fundraisers is part of what we are called to do as caretakers of this home. So I was like, okay, I said to my husband, I'm going to host like a curated vintage sale in our house. So I text this woman. I'm like, what do you think of this idea? And she's like, I love it. So I'm like, okay, like let's kind of toss back and forth like some ideas of products. Like what should I be looking for? Like, because she's younger than me. I don't know what younger people are looking for. So we kind of went back and forth. I created some mood boards and I was like, okay, I'm going to just start hitting up estate sales and thrift stores and all the things, right? So for about 9 months, I have been shopping and I have been collecting and accumulating stuff in my house. And it's, for the most part, gone into my basement. You would never know it. If you walked to my house, you would never know that anything different was going on because it was all in the basement. But here's the thing with clutter. And I don't like to call this stuff clutter because I don't think it's clutter, because I think it was like all for the greater glory of God and for raising money for this cause, right? But it's definitely more stuff in my house than I'm used to. And even though it was hidden, I still felt the weight of it. And if you have clutter in your home, you can probably relate to what I'm saying. And so that kind of built up, right? In the meantime, my oldest son went off to college in the fall, and I was finally, I thought with my son going to college, I would have all this extra time for some reason. I don't know. But I have been waiting to take my podcasting course. So you may have heard me talk about like, oh, I'm taking a course right now to make the podcast better. So that started in September. And it really was like going back to college. Like it was just nonstop lessons, and then just the launching of my new group coaching course. I went from a 6-week course to a 12-week course. So I doubled the length of the course. And part of my podcasting class is she wanted us to have a Facebook group and do a newsletter every week. So you may have noticed that, oh, now Gina has a newsletter. And it's all great. And I've heard from many of you that you really enjoy the newsletter. I know you're opening it because I can see the open rate, and industry standards for really good is 30% open rate. As when I say open rate, I mean people clicking on it and reading it. My average is 60%. So 60% of you are actually opening the newsletter. So I'm like, okay, something's going right? I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing according to this course, but it's all like one more little thing. And so it's just building and building. Then in the fall, there was a need for some soccer help. So I'm an assistant soccer coach. And then I didn't realize that it was a 2-season agreement. So then in the spring, I was like, I keep getting all these emails about soccer. And it's like, oh yeah, it's like a 2-season, like fall and spring soccer. So I was like, oh, okay. And again, the commitment is not huge. It's only, maybe 2 hours a week, but it's like one more thing, right? And and I love the girl that's the head coach. So it's like you feel like you're doing all these good things and they're all God led, and they probably are, but at some point you have to say like, I can't do them all, and I can't do them all well. And so that's where we are. So in April, I just felt like I was driving on a highway, and it had been a nice pace with like just a few people on the road with me. And then by April, I just felt like I was on the Autobahn, bumper to bumper, driving at 90 miles an hour, and the petrol light has come on, and I have to also use the bathroom, and I can't seem to get right to get off of the highway to get to the exit. And you just keep thinking, okay, I missed that exit. I'll get the next one, or the next one's going to be better, and then I can slow down, or I just have to get through this little bit of traffic and I'll get off at the next one. And that's kind of how my life was going until I just couldn't do it anymore. And so what I always say to my kids, and what I would say to you as friends, is like, stop and do the next right thing. Like when you feel like you've made a mistake or you're in over your head, just stop and do the next right thing. And so for me in April, it was all coming to a head because the sale that I was hosting in my house was happening Mother's Day weekend. So it was May 9th. And I just thought, I can't keep going at this pace. And so the first thing that went was the podcast. So that's where I've been since mid-April, and that's why I haven't had a podcast episode. I think I had a few recorded to get me through April a little bit, and then once I ran out of recorded episodes, then I was kind of like, I'm stuck. And instead of beating myself up and feeling guilty, I was just like, you know what? Um, this podcast is not life or death. I can definitely take a pause and practice what I preach, which is my life was filled with too much clutter. Most of it being a cluttered calendar and a cluttered mind, and I had no wiggle room or bandwidth to do anything else. And the reason I opened this podcast with one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not steal is because I feel like clutter has stolen so much from me in the past 18 months. And you can see because before I got the call to be Scoutmaster, I was taking an art class. It was like a very lovely time of my life. And I had wiggle room in my schedule. I was hanging out with friends. I was walking the dog. I was dating my husband. And those things have really fallen off since, taking on this role and me just building on it. Yes, I know all of this is self-inflicted. But I know I'm also not alone. Like they have mugs that say, stop me from volunteering. There's a reason because it's like, don't let me put my hand up anymore. And I always say to you guys, like, there is no regret or shame or mistakes or beating yourselves up when you have clutter. There is only tuition. And when I say tuition, I mean we paid a price and we learned a lesson. Let's hope we don't have to pay the same price again to learn the same lesson. So this is me moving forward. I've learned my lesson. I've learned to say no and take breaks. And I'm just evaluating the podcast and where I'm going from here. I think the newsletter is going to go from weekly to monthly because it's just one little thing I can kind of get rid of. And I would encourage you, if you like the podcast, that you hit the subscribe button, because I think one of the things in the podcast was I was putting up that episode for today. So people were relying on the new newsletter to be reminded to listen to the podcast. So if you just hit subscribe, you're never going to miss a Wednesday episode. Okay, I promise you. What clutter also stole from me was a lot of joy. Like I just didn't feel like I was even enjoying my house. I had so much stuff. And it really did. Once I took down my Christmas decorations is when I decided to start setting up for the sale. So from January until May, my first floor of my house, I was putting all of my personal items in the basement or in my bedroom and setting up things for the sale. So my house looked like a store since January. And it just kept getting more and more so as I brought stuff up from the basement and cleaned it and styled it and priced it and did all the things for the sale. I feel like when I say that it stole my joy, and it's not just the sale, because I've loved so much of this. I don't think I would do it again, but I learned a lot, and I'm going to tell you what I learned. And so therefore I feel like it was worth it. But one of the things I love is decorating my house. Like I'd love to do, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see behind me, these are the shelves in my office / sunroom. And I love to style my shelves. I love to style my coffee table or my console tables. I love arranging fresh flowers. That is all the things that bring me great joy in my house. It's why I love to shop vintage. I love to come home and style the things that I've picked up and found on my journeys. And when I feel like I don't have any wiggle room in my schedule, those things that bring me joy are the first to go. So I really do feel like I have been robbed of my joy. I've been robbed of even enjoying my husband or my kids or even my dog, my poor dog. I feel like she hasn't been walked in so long. Like it used to be a really regular thing that she and I would go for a walk every morning and get out in nature. And, it's like the first thing when you're in survival mode, like you just start letting go of whatever can be let, how do you say? You can, I don't know. You let go of what you can let go of, right? Um, but here's what I did learn in this past year or so, especially with the sale. When I had to remove all of my personal items from my first floor, I got to touch everything I own, which is not a common thing. Like there's probably things in your home that you haven't even seen in years, let alone touched it. But I absolutely had to pick up and handle every single thing in my house because everything had to be removed so I can bring up the products for the sale. So this gave me a wonderful opportunity to really evaluate, do you love this thing? Do you want to keep it? And because I was thrifting for vintage items that I found lovely, I'm also being tempted constantly with like, oh, do you love this vintage thing that you bought for the sale? And if so, then something else has to go. So what I was doing was if I didn't truly, truly love what I had already from my personal collection, I slapped a price tag on it and I put it in the sale. So I got rid of so much of my own stuff because I figured this is your chance. I think I've talked before about the silver candlesticks. They've always been on the chopping block. I used them one more time this past Christmas and I hummed and hawed, and I did end up putting them in the sale and they were one of the first things to be sold. So so it's good because I feel like I passed it on. I raised money for a good cause and I also got to clear out some of my own personal stuff too. So I did get rid of a ton of my own stuff. And I really feel like my house is decluttered down to things that I absolutely love. And the very first thing I did when I started cleaning up after the sale was go buy fresh flowers and make a fresh flower arrangement. And if I can find a picture, I will post that picture in my newsletter. Um, but yeah, so that was the first thing I did. And I've had fresh flowers for the 3 weeks since the sale has happened because it really, it frees up that little bit of space in your day that you can trim the flowers, refresh the water, and just appreciate the beauty that is in every day. Just slowing down and listening to the kids and not constantly be thinking about what do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? Like, okay, guys, come on, come on, come on. The bus is coming. Get out the door so mommy can start doing this thing for other people. And these are my people. Like, God gave me this family, and it's a beautiful family. And I feel like they've gotten the leftovers of me for the past 18 months. And that's definitely going to change. So I'm excited to move forward. And I just want to encourage you to not beat yourself up if you find that you've gotten in over your head or like you're drowning in clutter or debt or time commitments, that like just learn from it. Um, because I've always loved thrifting, I've always kind of had it in the back of my brain that maybe I could have a little vintage shop or maybe I would like to resell items for a profit. And I think this sale scratched that itch and I don't want to do that. So that was a huge lesson that I got to learn for kind of for free because what if I opened a store and 6 months in, I was like, this is not for me. So I got to test it with a fundraiser. And while it was fun, I also learned that it's not as easy to shop for vintage things when you're not keeping them. So I was constantly thinking about the price. If, I tried to buy things that I felt that I could triple the price of what I paid. So if I paid two, could I get $6? And it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it, you start getting into that dollar stop at Target and you think like, I don't know if a woman would pay $6 for this when she can go to Target and get something very similar for 3. So it was fun, but it was also not as fun as just shopping vintage for my own love of the vintage. So I learned that I did learn what people do like and don't like. And it's funny because I did buy a few items that I thought, well, I don't love these, but maybe other people will. Those items didn't sell and they ended up back at the thrift store. So I learned that I should trust my gut, because things that I bought because I thought they were fabulous, they were like some of the first things to go. So it was fun. I learned a lot. I met some really great people. In the end, we raised almost $5,000 for the charity. So I felt like it was worth it. Um, but I'm still taking my podcasting course. I just haven't gone to any of the classes. So I'm definitely going to pick up on those classes and start listening a little bit more. I love my relationship with God, and I feel like He gave me my whole summer of content. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I have been working my way through all of the mysteries of the Rosary, starting from the joyful mysteries and the whole life of Jesus, all the way through the glorious mysteries. So I have 2 more episodes to finish out the mysteries of the Rosary. And then I'm going to move into my idea for summer, because I was praying about it. I was like, God, what do you think we should do for summer? Like, what do you want me to talk about? And He gave me an idea that I think is pretty good. So stick around for that. And if you're new here, just know that this is not my typical episode. I usually talk about decluttering and meal planning and running your home efficiently, but really it's about decluttering so you have time and bandwidth to hear what God's calling you to do. And I feel like at this season of life, God's calling me to just kind of slow down and take in the beauty of the everyday. So have a great day, and I thank you for listening this long, and I will see you next Wednesday. Take care.